All right. Well, welcome, and I appreciate everybody and the short notice that we did have for this particular meeting. You know, this morning when I was driving in to the office, because there are just a couple people that still do that. The last thing that I wanted to listen to was more news about COVID-19, and as such, as I turned my radio on, I was searching for I was going to search for a music station that I could listen to, and because I channel surf, my radio was on a country music station, and as luck would have it, the song I think Trace, maybe Trace Adkins, one of the Atkins, who sings "You're Going to Miss This." Anyway, the song "You're Going to Miss This" was was playing on on the radio, and if you have not heard the song or not familiar with that particular song, the essence of it is all these stressful, challenging things that we go through. Certainly, it had no reference to COVID-19. Cause us to sometimes not stop and appreciate what's happening, and really some of the things that create the stressors for us in our lives are those things that someday in our life we'll look back and miss, and maybe potentially have some regret around that. So as we get started, I do want to pause just for a second. I know, and I mentioned my wife the other day when we did this, but I haven't been so good about letting her know how much I appreciate her. Um, I told you how much I appreciate her, but maybe haven't told her. So let's just take a second. Who, in all this stress that we've been going through, who's someone that you can commit in your private thoughts? Maybe tonight you'll tell how much you appreciate them. And when we think of that too, I started thinking about of all the crazy things. When I was a junior high school principal, I remember this dad. The first time I met him, he referenced me very loudly and in close proximity physically to me. I mean, he would be definitely violating the COVID-19 social distancing rules at this point. But he was using words I'm not sure I had ever heard before. Now, I mean, I had played college football. I'd heard a lot of profane terminology in my life. But this gentleman shared with me phrases, or at least combinations of phrases that I don't know, I didn't know were humanly possible. And that was a very, very frustrating situation for me to have this parent who I'd never met before confront me with such anger and really kind of fear that was driving that. But just to give the short version, a couple months later, this particular dad actually on a regular basis would walk in to my office, grab a coffee cup, and pour himself a cup of coffee in my office. And we would typically start the day with a quick conversation with the cup of coffee. And, when I think about that story, one of the things, and I know you've got some great stories too, but I think how crazy it is that the reality of life is those toughest kids, those toughest parents that you've ever had to deal with, when all is said and done, they become our favorite stories when we look back on. Those relationships, they're the kids that are the most energetic. 10 years later, when they see you in Walmart, when we're allowed to go to Walmart again or whatever the case may be. But our toughest situations become our favorite stories. In fact, another way that we might say it is that sometimes the challenge is not in the way. Sometimes the challenge is the way. And I know in our admin meetings, we continue to have those conversations about so much of this particular or these particular circumstances, as frustrating as they are, and as hard as it is sometimes in the middle of this to pay attention to. These great challenges really, I'm confident, will someday be our favorite stories about each other, and they'll be our favorite stories that we tell with each other in the future. I'm already starting to hear stories. Mule came by this morning. He was sanitizing the central office, and he was talking to me about how much he was enjoying delivering the meals, and started talking about how when he approached a house that he thought wouldn't have internet, he'd stop the bus, get off the bus, go up to the house, bang on the door, and say, "Hey, in case you didn't know it, we're delivering meals." And I think about the extra effort that he was talking about in terms of making sure our kids have those meals. I hear stories about how you, the teachers and aides and whoever else in our system, have already been reaching out and connecting with the students and making sure that they're okay with that. I know that sometimes even in that process of reaching out to them, where we have families that are offering or lending their own computing devices to neighbors who have kids, so that those kids can have those devices in there. And I'm super encouraged about the stories that I'm hearing about how our community, how you within that community are already making such a great difference. So I know it's almost spring break. Get on with it, right?